Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the channel. My name is Michael for the Internet Brands Auto Group, and welcome back to another exciting adventure in our carb-legal LS3 swap Buick Roadmaster Wagon project. This is very insanely dangerous. You could get killed because there are springs in the front, upper, and lower control arms, and they are under enormous amounts of pressure, and you have to take apart bushings and ball joints, and everything just wants to snap and fly apart. So please, if you do this yourself, I recommend taking it to a shop, but if you're trying to learn like I am, please be extra careful. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're going to disconnect the sway bar end links. That's going to prevent the other side of the car from kind of pushing on the sway bar, which turns out is very important. Then you're going to remove the original shock. You move the top bolt first, then the two bottom bolts. That will just slide right out. Take off the cotter pin, and I'm going to loosen the castle nut that's on the lower spindle that's connected to the lower ball joint of the lower control arm. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure to use my floor jack, and I'm going to hold up the spring from underneath the entire time. Once I've got the castle nut loose and I'm supporting the spring, I'm going to use this thing called a ball joint separator, which looks like a fork with a kind of a bolt into it. Tighten that up and it compresses it and it separates the ball joint from the spindle. And this is even a little bit dangerous here. It'll jerk down, but again, you left the castle nut on, so it's gonna hold it. And then finally, once that's loose enough, lower the lower control arm out of the way. Now in this process, you wanna use a spring compressor to hold onto your spring during that time. I also use a ratchet strap to hold the spring into the lower control arm, so even if something bad goes wrong, it's not gonna fly out, it'll get stuck to that. Dangerous part is over. No more getting shot in the face with the 800-pound gorilla, so that's pretty cool. Over to the junk pile. Making good progress. Everything's detached for the lower control arm, and so what I like to do at this point is that I've still got the jack here now supporting the car, and that way I can push downwards on the control arm. Hardest part coming up right now. Got our lower control arm. Needs to go back up into the factory position, and there's like an indentation in the Roadmasters on front of the metal housing. It kind of comes in here, and so it's so hard to get this front one in. So I found yesterday that I was able to get the rear one in and then kind of persuade it into place with my rubber mallet. The other thing that's interesting is that you get two different types of bolts, and you get these corresponding sleeves or what have you, and basically gotta press or hammer these into here. And then these are the thicker bolts that are fitting mine. Here's the castle nut, so that's ready to go. In the QA1 drawing, they want you to kind of set it up like this going in, but on my car at least, in the back, the bolt doesn't have enough room down here in this section, so I ended up doing on the other side, both front to back, and that's how it was set up when I took the OEM stuff off, so we'll just try that. I'll be best. I've been listening to tunes, just relaxing and then swearing, and then relaxing and then swearing again. But I feel very triumphant having gotten this done. You're basically fighting for millimeters to get everything to line up perfectly. Props to the people who designed these cars originally. Props to the people who designed this aftermarket stuff. Props to the shops that are working on this. Props to everybody out there who is doing a project like this one. This is it's simple, right? But very hard, and I'm learning a lot, and kudos to all the people who are really good at this, because I'm getting my butt kicked, but success. And so now it's time to put the coilover into position. So basically what we're gonna do, we're gonna put the lock, we're gonna put the coil seat in, we're gonna lube it up with the Permatex, we're also gonna put the thrust washer, which is two regular washers and the thrust washer. It's a thrust washer sandwich. You put that on there, extend the shock all the way, put the spring into place with the narrow side down, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna thread it up into the high mounting place, tighten it there into place, and you squish it down so that your bushings start to expand out to the size of the washers. Then you'll kind of have it hanging here. So we'll use the jack to lift up the arm into position, connect the spring down here, and then we can set our ride height before putting the weight onto things. Update for you. Coilover in its mount and up here. We're reconnected to the lower ball joint. So now we're gonna go ahead and swap out the upper control arm. It's just two bolts. They're gonna be a little hard to get to because of it looks like some smog and some air conditioning piping over on this side. Boom. All right, so gonna make sure we got all the stuff back here. You gotta collect all your shims because you're putting those back. So you're gonna reuse your factory hardware. So it's gonna go bolt into here, in between this piece of metal and the control arm mounting point. You're gonna put your shims back, then you're gonna put a washer that's supplied by QA1, then you're gonna put the nut back on. You need to put the washer between the nut and your new upper control arm mounting place. We're torqued, washered, cotter pinned, torqued, 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 going up and going down. Might be a little lower on this side actually. That is the wagon's air compressor that's going to be going away when we do the coilovers in the back. One finger there. I think I'm a little low on this side by comparison. Let's see. Well, no, I think it might be about the same. Let's see, let's go back. Photographic evidence. Driver side, passenger side, driver side, passenger side. I mean, they look pretty similar. Let's check to see if I can turn this back and forth. Here we are in the next morning, and it's time to do the rear coilovers. QA1 makes an amazing video. It's on YouTube. Check it out. I'll put the link in the description down below, or just search QA1 B-body wagon rear coilover install. Shocks and the springs are out and about. Next step, put in the upper coilover mounting brackets. Looking at this figure, see the slotted hole is going to go towards the front of the car, and this is the driver's side one, so it's going to flip up into position like that up in the car, and then two of the holes are you're going to reuse the stock holes and then have to drill a 5/16 bit to fit into here. That was absolutely terrifying. I've never drilled into a car before, but it was pretty simple. Got these two bolts and nuts into place, snugged up the plate, drilled through with a 5/16 bit, and then I took some paint and then I put it up into the hole there. All right, we've got the upper brackets installed, and we drilled an upper hole for the lower mounting bracket. Put the shorter screw in on the bottom, line it up, make a mark, drill with a number 29 coming backwards out towards where the camera is right now, and then you use a 1/2-inch drill to drill forwards to make that hole, and then I painted that hole to prevent corrosion. Executive assistant alert! Hi, sweetie. Well, it's bright outside. How are you? Sorry for the overexposure.
I didn't even know the car is up like an elevator. Gotta go. Bye, guys.
Bye, llama. There's the upper mount, and right there, there's extra gusseting here apparently in the wagons. So we are gonna have to get the coilover into place, mark this section, and then grind this out just a little bit to make sure there's a 1/2-inch clearance. Moment of truth. Okay, we've got two rear coilovers into place. It took me all day, and check the clearance on my grinding. I might have to do a little bit more grinding, but we're done for the day with the install. We'll check the ride height. Nice and slow. All right, here we go. All right, folks, it's a new day, and now we're doing the Hotchkis steering rebuild kit. So the biggest challenge over here in the frame, see, there's a couple holes for the idler arm. So we got to do a couple more bushing separations that we didn't do during the control arm installations. And we got to get these bolts out of the frame. Success! We have no steering now. Hooray! All right, that's it. We're done. No, just kidding. We got the new one on top. Nothing is tight yet. I got to check with Hotchkis about how tight to make these. I didn't see any instructions actually, which was kind of a bummer. But the main goal is going to make these inner and outer tie rods. We want to make sure that they're the same length as the old ones. Here we go, all the way installed, and we've got new steering, and we're going to do the steering box when the engine is out. So now we have steering, coilovers, control arms, sway bars, rear coilovers, rear sway bar, rear lower trailing arms, and of course the wheel wood brakes. and wheels and tires. So that's everything on the car so far. Let's get this puppy aligned and get the height set and see how we're at. Through the magic of movie editing, it is now about a month later. I've put a couple hundred miles on the QA1 suspension. So here's a couple things that I learned about the whole process. As you're tightening the upper bushing on the front coilovers, it's very important to make sure that you not over tighten that bushing. I ended up with a little bit of kind of extra vibration and noise up front, a little bit of hardness. And so after talking to the folks at QA1, I went ahead and loosen that up a little bit so there's a little less firmness right where the coilover is meeting the frame of the vehicle, and I think that really helped out. I also really like the ride height right now. I guess it could be a touch lower, but I wanted to make sure I could clear everything, driveways and speed bumps and that type of stuff. Out back, I initially installed the rear coilovers so that they were in the lowest possible position, and I love the way it looked, but I was having some problems exiting my driveway and hitting just the back of the factory resonator on the exhaust. Now that won't be a problem once we do our new exhaust, but at the same time it felt it was a little bit too low, and I was also having clearance issues with the rear sway bar hitting my shielding on my gas tank, and so that was transmitting a lot of noise and vibrations into the body of the vehicle, particularly when we hit bigger bumps like expansion joints on freeways. But before we make our final conclusions on the QA1 coilover system, I'm in a parking lot at our office building, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this course setting the shocks up at different levels: 0 out of 18, 6 out of 18, 12 out of 18, and 18 out of 18, and try to walk you through and describe what the car feels like as I make it firmer and firmer. In drive, here we go. Bump, very mild. Good amount of body roll. All right, in 0 out of 0. First reactions, very soft. It feels a lot like the original suspension, but with just a little bit more kind of vibrations almost. It's kind of odd when the shocks aren't set to anything. It seems almost a little bit bouncy. The coilovers, I mean, excuse me. 6 clicks. So here we go. All right, firm. Much less body roll. First impressions of 6 is that it's definitely a lot firmer, but not a bad ride. I've done this on the highway and I thought it was doing pretty good. 12 out of 18. All right, definitely firm. A lot more rattling in the cabin. Interesting change of plans. I was going to take all 4 coilovers up to 18 out of 18 on the firmness scale. The front driver's coilover, unfortunately, I'm unable to get it past 12. In the owner's manual, it says not to force these things. So basically I could go down to 1, click, 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 and right around 12, I just don't have enough torque to grip it. Maybe it would be easier if the wheel was off, but at the same time, none of the other coilovers are having that problem. I'm able to twist those still to go up to 18 if I wanted to. I think I'm just gonna call off that portion of the test here because again, I don't want to damage anything. I don't know if I'm gonna need to return this or what have you. But that being said, and already at 12 out of 18, the wagon is bouncing, it's rattling every seat belt, every piece of 30-year-old plastic that's in this thing, and so I don't really think I'm going to see that much in terms of benefits unless I was on a really smooth surface or something like that. What I've personally been happy at is somewhere in the kind of 4 to 6 or 8 range is where I've been playing around with these the most. Wrapping up my thoughts on where the car is now, as well as QA1 coilovers and upper and lower control arms. One, I think they're a really nice product. I think they're well made, and I think they mostly work as advertised. I will say that I was a little bit disappointed with some of the customer service I received. Calling in, asking a few questions, and the guys on the line, I don't think they're necessarily dealing with first timers like me, which again, you know, falls on my shoulders. So when I call with more basic questions like, hey, I've been working on putting in this lower control arm for like an hour, banging on it with my rubber hammer. Am I doing that right? You know, they were like, yeah, you just put it in. Talked to a lot of people since then, people who have much more experience in this than me, and they're all like, oh yeah, control arms are total awful to do, you know? I wish the challenge of the job itself was conveyed a little bit more clearly. On the YouTube videos, it's like, yeah, spend a couple hours working on your QA1 stuff, and it's super easy, and I think their customer service could be just a touch better when dealing with this stuff. It's not bad, but just you know, just a little bit more helpful to kind of more basic questions, perhaps. And then I am a little bit concerned that I have the one coilover that won't go past 12 clicks out of 18. That is a bummer. Maybe I'll give them a call and figure out what to do with that. But overall, I think the QA1 stuff is really nice. The control arms really change the geometry, so as you're turning, there's a lot more angle into the wheel, so as you're loading up into the corners, I think it does a really nice job of turning the vehicle. I love the fact that you can adjust the height on the coilovers themselves, really dial it into the look and performance level that you're looking for. Overall, the install of the coilovers themselves isn't terribly challenging. It was involved, but pretty straightforward and pretty simple, so I enjoyed that process as well. And also putting in the rear coilovers is going to leave more room for a different exhaust routing once we put the engine in and we get the MagnaFlow exhaust, so that's going to be amazing. Again, big thanks to Summit Racing for the discount on all the suspension components that we purchased through them. That really helped our budget. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, one, the wagon has improved dramatically over stock, but it's still not a sports car. It's still not as good as a Mustang. It's still not as good as driving a Lexus or a Cadillac. And I think that really comes down to the fact that like coilovers are not some magic bullet that's going to turn your ride into kind of a perfect modern car. You're still dealing with the chassis components that you have. And so I think without changing out your chassis to something newer, or without, you know, making it more structurally rigid, you're still going to be dealing with kind of the flaws of the original kind of design, because again, this was never designed to be a sports wagon. It was designed to be a luxury cruiser. And so those are very different goals and very different engineering aims. And so I think in my head, I was kind of hoping that these coilovers would be this magic bullet that made it perfect instantly, but I think it's going to take a little bit more dialing in. You know, I think it's in a good place right now, but once the new engine is in, kind of the weight of the vehicle front to back is going to change a little bit. So there's going to be more dialing in, and I'm going to take it to a suspension shop that can hopefully, you know, corner balance it, cross balance it, all those types of things to make sure the suspension is as tuned as it possibly can. But overall, I'm excited about where we've been, and I'm excited about where we're going. I think if I was going to do this again, I might go in one of two different ways. I would either go kind of with some lowering springs designed for the Impala SS, kind of stick more old school with springs and shocks and kind of just get a slightly firmer, slightly sportier ride, but maintain that old school suspension. Or I would go ahead and upgrade to QA1 double adjustable coilovers, so that way I could have more control over the compression and rebound settings and see if I can dial it in exactly as I'm envisioning in my mind. But you live, you learn. Overall, I'm pretty impressed. It's a massive upgrade, but it's an expensive one. In my case, my upper and lower control arms, all my bushings were starting to crack and they were torn, so I needed to do something. And I wanted to learn and do this experiment, and I think it's coming out fine. I mean, that's kind of the whole process here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm having a blast doing this. I'm learning a lot. I'm making mistakes. Let's get on to part 5, where we are gonna start taking out the old drivetrain. Yeah, that's right. This engine, this transmission, cooling system, everything is coming out of the car in the next episode, so we can prepare to put the new drivetrain in. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.